Oh, well, I'll tell you what. It's sure trying to feel like fall. It kind of felt like fall a little bit here the last couple days. I'm wearing a hoodie and a vest. It was chilly this morning. The wind is picking up. I'm seeing a pretty rapid change in color from our leaves. There's leaves falling. There's a crisp in the air. It's finally feeling like fall. And I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing me talk about weather, but it's been a variable this year, I'll tell you what, that has impacted so much. I mean, this last week, you're talking the first full week. What is it today? It's the 6th, the first week, almost full week of October. And I wore shorts and a t-shirt several nights coaching football and running around, and we're sweating still. I don't feel like that should be the case, but it is. So we're finally feeling some cool weather. I can hear the wind just whistling behind. If you're on the water this morning, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was cold here on Sunday. It was cold yesterday morning on Saturday. I mean, it is what it is. My parents had a bonfire last night, concerned about the wind conditions. Things are starting to fall into line for fall, finally. Finally fall? Is that something? Finally fall? We're going to go over some things that are working, talk a little tactics. Last time we talked to you last week, it was basically summer in terms of how we were fishing, how we were targeting these fish, what we were doing. Ned rigs, jig worms. We talked about the variation, how we have that progression in the 3 ways of doing it. We've caught some fish this week on crankbaits. Fish are starting to move shallow. The weeds are still lingering hard. You still can't just burn a shallow crankbait right now along much of the lakes we're fishing. I think that's going to change here in the coming weeks pretty quick, but we still couldn't. Chatterbaits, swim jigs, things like that, starting to become a norm, starting to play a role. We threw the all-terrain swim jig quite a bit this week in a variety of sizes and colors. Put a paddle tail on the back, put a creature bait in the back, cover water. The beauty of the swim jig is I'm very, very, very versatile. I'm very efficient. I'm very productive. I can do everything from 2 feet to 12 feet. I can pitch it around heavy cover. I can give it a slow swim action through expansive sand spots, whatever it might be. I can skip a dock. I can flip it at a lily pad. I can throw it in a pocket. Okay, you get the point. But the swim jig, that all-terrain swim jig's been awesome. This is the standard swim jig. This has been out for many, many years. It works exceptionally well. You now have the Finesse swim jig from All Terrain that I've really grown to like. That's new now in the last year. There's a Finesse swim jig, a little more compact, a little less skirt material, a little more of a bullet. Not going to glide as much in the water. It's going to be another versatile option. So between the standard swim jig and the Finesse swim jig, that's been a very easy way to catch fish. We talked about the Chatterbait. I'm going to grab my good buddy Brody's rod right here, just because he's been burning. Actually, this is Ben's rod. He's got his new Shimano Corrado on there. They're burning chatterbaits. That's a mini max. We've talked about the mini max. It's very versatile for all types of situations, largemouth, smallmouth, even walleyes. Don't forget about the chatterbait for big walleyes. This has been a very versatile setup as well. You can just cover water. You can just pitch and wind. You can stay warm. You can stay comfortable. So the chatterbait's something that's going to get a nod from me definitely the next few weeks. I love fishing that bait. It's a very, very productive bait. A lot of anglers at all levels of bass fishing rely on a chatterbait. I think that goes without saying. Every one of you watching this probably has some type of a chatterbait in their tackle box and or tied on. So that works well. Don't forget the jig. Make sure you continue to throw a jig. Water temps are now going into the 60s. I think the days of 70-degree water temp are behind us. We are now in the 60s. Soon, hopefully, we get into the 50s. A lot of fish really, really, really start to move up shallow and do their thing. But I continue to throw the jig. This is a 3/4 ounce AT, rattling AT jig. I still throw this quite a bit. The 1/2 ounce works fine. The 3/8 ounce is going to be your workhorse. In fact, my good buddies Don Wilson, Tony Lero, won the All Terrain Cup at the end of last month. They came in a week or so ago and designed this month's Jig of the Month for All Terrain. It's actually a 3/8 ounce watermelon head with an AT craw tail. It's really cool. I do not have one here on me. But if you go to allterraintackle.com and scroll in the navigation bar and hit Jig of the Month, it'll take you right to this jig that they designed. And what they did cool about this jig is, contrary to the rattling AT jig here that I'm talking about, they pulled the rattle off. They pulled the trailer lock off. They kept it simple. they trim their skirt a little bit. It'll come untrimmed, but you can trim it. They trim it down a little bit, and that is your true combat jig. It's a skip and jig, not a lot of resistance. That's why the rattle's gone. Trailer lock's gone. Two things I love when I'm punching, but they're using this. They call it the TD Dock Dinger. I laugh because Tony spanks docks all the time. I can hear it when I fish near him. The TD Dock Dinger, and it's just a combat jig, shallow water fishing at its finest, which is what we're going to do now the next several weeks. So check out that all-terrain jig of the month. It's an awesome option for your arsenal, and it's just a little bit of a modified, I now call it an AT jig, not a rattling AT jig because the rattle's gone. That TD Dock Dinger jig of the month, but don't forget the jig. Another bait I've been fishing a lot again right now, we talked about this earlier in the year, is that Hail Mary Ned head. And this is, I call it, I look at it more of like a finesse football head. All Terrain makes that Hail Mary Ned head, but it's actually a small version flat top football head. Long shank, barbarian hook. And I fish this on a spinning rod. It's very versatile. I've caught bass, I've caught walleyes on this lately. And I'm just fishing that Mr. Twister Sassy Swimmer. Just a little paddle tail on there. It's a ring body. This happens to look like a perch. It looks like a bluegill, a crappie, a minnow, whatever it might be. And this here, I can pitch and I can wind and I can throw a deep, I can throw shallow, I can throw at a dock. I'm very, very versatile with this presentation. So this is something I put on the spinning rod, 15-pound braided main line, maybe an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, medium light action, 7.5 foot rod, 2500 or 3000 series Shimano, and away we go. So this is another versatile option right now just to catch a whole bunch of fish. Don't forget about Ned rigs and jig worms. We've talked about that. We've beaten that drum hard, but it still is effective. We talked about the crankbait. The crankbait's getting a lot of fish to bite right now too. Don't forget about the crankbait. So a lot of ways to catch some bass right now. The walleye fishing, things are starting to trickle into place just ever so slightly. I'm excited to see what happens over this next week. Fish are starting to locate on some of their more traditional fall spots. We're catching them on some small Ned rigs. Heavy heads though. The key here is that heavy head. I'm going up to a 1/5 or a 1/6 ounce head on this Ned rig because I want to hit that bottom hard. I want to hit it quick. I want to hit it now. There's still some weed growth going on, and I'm working that Ned like that. If I can fish a jig and wrap or a tikka minnow, I'll do it. Still snagging some weeds. Not my ideal presentation quite yet. I think when we talk a week from now, there may be some fish caught on a tikka minnow. Consider that. The bobber rig has worked pretty well. I've been actually using artificial leeches. I can't find one around here right now, so I've been using Gulp Alive leeches, Berkeley Gulp leeches. I've been putting it on the same setup, power corking. We've talked about that in the past. I got my bobber, I got my cylinder weight, I got my plain hook, and I'm using a 3 or 5 inch Gulp Alive leech, and that's worked. I've caught some fish doing that. Obviously, bass like it. Panfish steelers, even some walleyes are starting to bite that. Really effective way as I'm scanning with my forward-facing sonar to just throw that rig at a fish and let it do its job. So the walleye thing's starting to come into play. The shallow crankbaits for walleyes are going to become a thing as well. Obviously the jig and minnow, and by jig and minnow, I don't mean a live minnow. Certainly you can catch a fish on a live minnow right now, right? But I'm talking tungsten jig head or lead jig head, depending what you're using. I'm using the Scope TG from All Terrain, tungsten jig head, and your favorite minnow bait, plastic minnow bait. And I can cover water, I can pitch, I can see things, I can fish suspended fish, I can fish shallow fish, I can fish some of these little pods of wolf packs of walleyes and bass that are pulling up onto the rocks. I'm very effective with a spinning rod and a jig and minnow. A stroller jig, we all get it. You can research that on your own. All of you are probably familiar with that technique of fishing right now. It's becoming the norm. So a lot of ways to catch our fish right now. I'm excited that we're actually wearing some clothes like you see me have on. I got sweats and a hoodie and a vest. It's nice not getting just beat up by the sun. So I'm excited that this is going to be probably our norm now for a little while, and then we'll even be dressing warmer as the weeks go on here in the month of October. So that feels good. You can't feel it. You can maybe hear the wind a little bit. You can't feel it like I can, but sitting here in my garage, I got a breeze coming in. It feels so good here in the afternoon, on a Sunday afternoon. Gonna go watch some more football. Ben plays this evening. Excited for that. We're coming at you right now, not to spoil the Vikes, but the Vikings are still undefeated after today. I love it. We got a lot more football ahead of us for the NFL. We got some more football left for the kiddos, high school programs. So it's fall. Hopefully this helps you catch a few fish. Get out there, set some hooks for me. Let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear your feedback on what's working for you as well. Maybe I can learn some things from you. So comment below if you have something you want to chime in on. Otherwise, get after it this week. We'll see you in a bit.